For years, the world's biggest superpowers have been locked in a quiet, ruthless war over a single silver-white metal that most people never even think about until their phone battery dies. Billions of dollars were poured into massive desert mines, deep-sea exploration concepts, and exclusive international trade agreements, all to secure enough lithium to fuel the electric vehicle revolution. Global leaders and top auto executives repeatedly promised us that whoever controlled the supply of this precious white gold would rule the economic future of global transportation. Entire national defense strategies were written around securing access to lithium mines, and global investors bet trillions on the idea that lithium was the non-negotiable heart of the modern energy transition. But while Western governments and legacy car manufacturers were hyper-focused on locking down every single lithium deposit on Earth, a massive team of battery scientists inside China was quietly working on a radical alternative that makes the entire multi-billion-dollar lithium race look obsolete. They didn't just find a new way to refine raw minerals or tweak existing battery packs to make them slightly more efficient. They removed lithium from the periodic equation entirely, engineering a commercially viable, high-performance battery powered by one of the most common, inexpensive, and readily available elements on planet Earth. This single technological leap is sending panic through international trade boards, threatening to pull the rug out from under established supply chains and leaving Western automakers scrambling to rewrite their decade-long strategies. But the real story isn't just about cheap power. It's about a brilliant, calculated geopolitical move that caught the entire global auto market completely off guard. To understand why this development is causing such absolute chaos, you have to look closely at the catastrophic economic trap the world walked into over the last decade. Automakers promised the public that electric cars would become progressively cheaper every single year, eventually reaching price parity with standard gas-powered cars. But as demand for electric vehicles surged across North America, Europe, and Asia, lithium prices didn't fall. They went on a volatile roller coaster ride, spiking by over 600% in a matter of months. Extracting lithium requires pumping millions of gallons of water out of delicate desert ecosystems, or operating massive, energy-intensive hard rock mines that take over a decade to construct. Worse yet, the raw lithium still had to be shipped across oceans to be refined into battery-grade chemical compounds, creating a supply chain so long, fragile, and politically sensitive that a single trade dispute or shipping delay could paralyze entire auto assembly plants. Automakers found themselves completely trapped, forced to spend thousands of dollars per vehicle just on raw chemical materials, while passing those exorbitant costs directly down to everyday consumers. Every major global power operated under the comfortable assumption that lithium was the only element capable of moving a modern passenger car down a highway at speed. That single, dangerous assumption created a massive economic vulnerability, opening up an opportunity for anyone bold enough to challenge the status quo. While Western automakers were busy signing 50-year lithium supply contracts, research institutes across East Asia began aggressively re-examining a battery chemistry that mainstream scientists had abandoned decades ago: sodium ion. On paper, sodium looks like an absolute technological dream. It sits right next to lithium on the periodic table, meaning it shares many of the exact same chemical properties required to move electrical charges back and forth inside a battery cell. But unlike lithium, which must be mined in remote corners of the world, sodium is practically everywhere. It can be harvested effortlessly from simple rock salt, or extracted from ocean water at a tiny fraction of the cost, making the raw material virtually unlimited and essentially immune to supply chain bottlenecks. However, early experiments with sodium back in the late 20th century hit a literal brick wall. Sodium ions are physically much larger and heavier than lithium ions. When scientists forced those bulky sodium ions into traditional battery electrodes, The internal materials swelled up like a sponge, cracked, and completely degraded after only a few dozen charge cycles. For nearly 40 years, the global scientific community consensus was unanimous. Sodium was simply too fat, too heavy, and too unstable to ever power a real highway vehicle. That was until Chinese material scientists fundamentally re-engineered the atomic structures inside the battery cell to solve the size problem. Instead of trying to force sodium into standard graphite anodes that couldn't handle the strain, researchers developed advanced hard carbon materials derived from agricultural byproducts that created wide, flexible atomic caverns inside the electrode. They paired this with newly engineered Prussian white and layered oxide cathode compounds, constructing open crystal pathways that allowed those bulkier sodium ions to slide in and out smoothly, without destroying the physical framework of the battery. Suddenly, the fatal stability issue that had stumped electrochemists for 4 decades vanished. Charge cycle life soared from a useless few hundred cycles into thousands of stable operations, matching the lifespan of standard vehicle batteries. The raw material costs dropped through the floor because sodium cells eliminate the need for expensive, morally problematic minerals like cobalt and nickel, replacing them with common iron, manganese, and sodium compounds that can be sourced locally anywhere on the planet. But that wasn't the whole story, because breaking the cost barrier was only the beginning of what these lab breakthroughs uncovered. While solving the raw material bottleneck sent immediate shockwaves through financial markets, the engineers working on sodium cells discovered a secondary, completely unexpected feature that directly solves one of the most infamously frustrating problems in the entire electric car industry. Anyone who has ever driven a traditional lithium-powered electric vehicle through a brutal northern winter knows the severe performance drop that comes with freezing weather. When the thermometer drops below freezing, liquid electrolytes inside lithium cells thicken, chemical reactions slow down to a crawl, and driving range can suddenly plummet by 40 to 50% overnight. Drivers find themselves stranded at charging stations, as charging speeds drop to agonizing levels, while heater systems rapidly drain whatever remaining power is left. Sodium-ion chemistry, however, operates under a completely different thermodynamic reality. Because of the lower solvation energy of sodium ions in specialized non-aqueous electrolytes, these new sodium cells can maintain over 85 to 90% of their full operational capacity, even in freezing environments, down to -20 degrees Celsius. While lithium-powered cars are losing half their range in a winter blizzard, sodium-powered vehicles operate almost as if it were a warm summer day, charging quickly and holding their energy without dramatic efficiency drops. As if winter survival wasn't enough, researchers uncovered an even bigger breakthrough that addresses the single most terrifying headline associated with electric vehicles: battery fires. Traditional high-energy lithium batteries carry a persistent risk of thermal runaway. If a lithium cell suffers an internal short circuit, physical puncture, or severe overheating, it can trigger an explosive chain reaction that generates its own oxygen, producing white-hot fires that burn at thousands of degrees and are nearly impossible for fire crews to extinguish with water. Sodium-ion cells, by contrast, possess a remarkably high thermal stability threshold and a far safer chemical breakdown profile. In rigorous safety testing, including aggressive nail puncture tests, heavy impact crushing, and extreme overcharging scenarios, sodium-ion packs consistently demonstrated zero thermal runaway, refusing to catch fire or explode even when completely destroyed internally. Furthermore, unlike lithium cells, which must be carefully stored and shipped with an active partial charge to prevent permanent copper collector corrosion, sodium cells can be fully discharged to 0 volts for shipping and long-term storage without suffering any internal damage whatsoever. That tiny technical distinction makes transporting, shipping, and storing sodium batteries profoundly safer, infinitely cheaper, and dramatically simpler across global freight networks. And what happened next would shock foreign industry observers who assumed this technology was still stuck in early development. While Western automotive executives were dismissing sodium as a niche science experiment that was at least a decade away from commercial realization, Chinese manufacturing giants like CATL, BYD, and Hainan Battery were already converting existing gigafactory assembly lines to mass-produce sodium cells at an unprecedented scale. Because sodium cells share a remarkably similar manufacturing process to traditional lithium iron phosphate batteries, battery companies didn't need to rebuild their multi-billion-dollar factories from scratch. They simply retooled existing equipment, swapped out chemical inputs, and adjusted manufacturing calibrations. Within months, commercial sodium battery packs were flowing off production lines at an astounding pace, bypassing years of anticipated factory construction delays and slashing production costs down toward an unheard-of $40 per kilowatt-hour. For context, that price point is far below what traditional lithium batteries were projected to reach by the end of this decade, effectively pulling the future of low-cost energy forward by almost 10 years. The real-world impact hit the pavement faster than anyone predicted when compact, fully functional sodium-powered passenger cars began rolling off real assembly lines and driving directly onto public highways. Automobile brands like Jack Yiwei, Chery, and Dongfeng launched compact urban commuters equipped with high-density sodium battery systems capable of real-world driving ranges exceeding 200 miles on a single charge. These vehicles aren't aimed at competing with luxury six-figure electric hypercars or massive 1,000-horsepower pickup trucks. They are laser-targeted at the massive, high-volume market of everyday commuters who simply want an affordable, indestructible, low-maintenance vehicle to drive to work, drop kids off at school, and run daily errands. By offering these vehicles at price points that rival or undercut traditional cheap gas cars, manufacturers unlocked access to millions of budget-conscious buyers who were previously priced completely out of the clean energy transition, creating a wave of adoption that caught traditional combustion engine markers totally unprepared. This sudden shift sent shockwaves far beyond car dealerships, detonating a massive bomb right in the middle of global trade politics and international diplomacy. For years, Western governments had been crafting elaborate trade policies, tax credit rules, and import tariffs designed specifically to restrict foreign reliance on refined lithium, cobalt, and rare earth minerals controlled by overseas processing networks. Legislative acts were passed, pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into localized mineral supply chains, incentivizing domestic mining operations, and placing massive tariffs on imported lithium-based battery components. But by pivoting decisively to sodium, manufacturers effectively rendered those carefully constructed trade barriers completely irrelevant overnight. You cannot build a foreign policy monopoly around restricting rare minerals when your competitor switches to a technology built entirely out of cheap, locally sourced table salt derivatives that can be manufactured anywhere on Earth without asking for foreign mining permits. The aggressive technological pivot effectively outmaneuvered foreign trade restrictions before those policies could even be fully implemented. Supply chain managers around the globe are now realizing the profound implications of this mineral immunity. In a world defined by geopolitical volatility, trade sanctions, and ocean shipping disruptions, relying on localized salt-based chemistry provides a level of national energy security that no lithium-based system can ever match. Nations without rich lithium deposits or expensive refining infrastructure can suddenly construct their own localized battery industries using basic domestic chemical plants and cheap local raw materials. The ability to manufacture high-performance energy storage without relying on foreign mineral monopolies shifts the global balance of power, removing one of the biggest geopolitical leverage points of the 21st century. But as revolutionary as this shift seems on the surface, the story doesn't end with a simple victory lap. Because behind the hype and marketing promises lies a complex set of engineering limitations and environmental paradoxes that the industry is only now starting to confront. Yet behind the breathless announcements and glowing headline press releases, there is a hard, physical ceiling to what sodium batteries can actually accomplish in the real world. While modern material science has successfully closed the energy density gap enough to make small city commuters and short-range vehicles completely viable, sodium is still fundamentally heavier and less volumetrically dense than top-tier lithium chemistries like nickel, manganese, cobalt. That means if you want to build an ultra-long-range luxury vehicle capable of traveling 500 miles on a single charge, or an electric semi-truck designed to haul heavy freight across an entire continent, a sodium battery pack would simply be too heavy and physically massive to fit into the vehicle chassis. High-end luxury cars and performance vehicles will continue to rely on advanced lithium, silicon, or solid-state chemistries for the foreseeable future, creating a permanent, two-tier automotive landscape, divided sharply between high-cost, high-density lithium performance and low-cost, high-durability sodium mass transit. The physical weight penalty, however, is only a fraction of the looming controversy surrounding the widespread deployment of sodium-ion technology. The far bigger, dirtier issue lies in the complete absence of an economic recycling framework for spent sodium cells. The entire global lithium recycling industry exists because the materials inside a dead battery, lithium, cobalt, and nickel, are immensely valuable, giving recycling companies a powerful financial incentive to collect, shred, and chemically recover those expensive metals. But sodium, iron, and manganese are so cheap and abundant that the raw materials inside a dead sodium battery are worth almost nothing on the open commodity market. That economic reality creates a terrifying industrial paradox. Because processing a spent sodium battery costs significantly more money than the raw materials inside are worth, commercial recycling facilities have virtually zero financial reason to process them. Without strict government mandates and heavy subsidies, millions of worn-out sodium battery packs could end up stacked in massive industrial storage yards or dumped into waste streams, creating a massive new electronic waste challenge that negates much of the clean environmental narrative. Furthermore, the environmental claims surrounding sodium extraction are facing aggressive new scrutiny from independent ecological researchers. While it is true that sodium bypasses the destructive brine mining practices of high-altitude desert regions, the industrial processing required to convert raw sodium salt into battery-grade chemical compounds still demands immense amounts of electrical energy, often powered by regional coal-heavy power grids. The synthetic production of hard carbon anodes relies heavily on high-temperature thermal treatment processes that release significant carbon emissions unless powered entirely by clean, renewable electricity. Critics argue that swapping lithium for sodium doesn't actually erase the industrial footprint of energy storage. It simply shifts the environmental burden from open-air mineral extraction in remote deserts to heavy chemical processing plants operating near urban industrial zones. Despite these serious trade-offs and lingering environmental debates, the rapid rise of sodium technology is forcing a massive structural shift across the entire global energy landscape that goes far beyond passenger automobiles. The most disruptive application for sodium ion isn't actually on four wheels. It's in massive, stationary grid storage facilities designed to store wind and solar energy for public utility networks. Stationary power grids don't care about battery weight or physical size. They only care about rock-bottom cost, long-term operational lifespan, absolute safety, and winter reliability. By deploying massive, building-sized sodium battery banks alongside wind farms and solar arrays, utility companies can store vast amounts of clean energy during peak production hours and discharge it back into the electrical grid during peak demand, without risking catastrophic fires or spending fortunes on lithium reserves. This capability is rapidly lowering the cost of large-scale renewable power, accelerating the retirement of old fossil fuel peaker plants, and stabilizing fragile electrical grids against climate-induced blackouts. As major manufacturing networks continue to pour billions into scaling up sodium production lines, the global auto industry finds itself standing at a historical crossroads. Traditional Western automakers, who spent the last decade dragging their feet on electrification and then poured hundreds of billions into securing legacy lithium supply chains, now find themselves trapped in a second-rate technological lag. They are stuck trying to sell expensive lithium vehicles to consumers facing high interest rates, while foreign competitors flood domestic and emerging international markets with ultra-affordable, freeze-proof, virtually fireproof, sodium-powered cars that cost a fraction to build and operate. The massive technological gamble has fundamentally split the automotive world into two distinct eras: the era of expensive, mineral-dependent luxury mobility, and the era of hyper-accessible, salt-powered mass transportation. The ultimate question facing the global economy is no longer whether sodium-ion batteries are good enough to replace lithium, but how quickly foreign competitors and legacy automakers can adapt before they are completely left behind by the market shift. The energy transition was always marketed as a simple, heroic tale of replacing oil wells with high-tech software and clean lithium batteries. But reality has proven to be far more chaotic, unpredictable, and strategically cutthroat. As cheap sodium-powered vehicles silently pour onto global roads and utility-scale salt batteries plug into power grids across the globe, the world is witnessing a masterclass in economic and technological disruption. The lithium gold rush that defined the last decade didn't end because the world ran out of lithium. It ended because a ruthless competitor figured out how to render the entire game obsolete using simple table salt. And as legacy automakers struggle to respond to this silent revolution, one uncomfortable question remains for everyone watching the global energy race. How many other multi-billion-dollar industries are currently sitting on outdated technology, completely oblivious to the breakthrough that is about to replace them?